right, let's talk note citation first. So you're going to footnote this document in your paper. What do you include? What's the first part? Tell me how it looks.
Last name will be off.
What was that?
Last name will be off.
For footnote.
Oh, for footnote. Sorry.
Yes. All right. So how would this one appear in your footnote?
Grant R.
Okay. What punctuation would you put after it?
Comma.
All right. Comma. What's next? Okay. Now, how's the title supposed to look?
Italics.
Right. Books and commentaries are in italics, or underlined, but you should be able to do it in italics. Journal articles are in quotation marks, right? So, or journal or a web-page article, right? So, any type of article, quotation marks, books, in italics. All right, and go with the title. Revelation isn't as bad, but for example, if you're doing something, a few of you are doing Mark chapter 16, right? And so if you're doing Mark chapter 16, some commentaries are going to be just Mark, some are going to be Gospel of Mark, some are going to be the Gospel according to Mark. If you're doing something in Romans or Ephesians or one of the letters, sometimes it will be the Epistle to, right, the Romans, or it will just be Romans or the letter to the Romans. So make sure you're looking at what the title is specifically. All right, so Revelation. What next?
Commentary series.
Oh. Okay, which is
The
BECNT, right? So we put our title in italics, parentheses, BCNT, and regular font. What comes after that?
supposed to be the volume, but we don't.
Yeah. In this case, the Baker Exegetical Commentary doesn't do volume numbers, but if you did have a commentary series that gave it a volume number, you would want to include that. In this case, there isn't one, so you can ignore that. What comes next? Punctuation-wise.
You just move it over?
Not a colon.
The semicolon.
Semicolon, right? So BCNT, semicolon. What information next?
Grand Rapids.
Right, so the next would be the city, and then your publisher, right? So Grand Rapids, colon, your publisher. What comes after the publisher name? Punctuation marks, couldn't think of the word.
Comma.
Right, comma, so you have your city, colon, right, name of your publisher, comma. What comes next?
The year.
Right, the year 2002. Close your parentheses off, comma, and then last, that's the last page. And the page number, 515 followed by a period. Right. So your footnote citation should look something like this. Bibliographic citation, similar but in some important differences. Right. It should be last name first, and Osborne, comma, Grant R. Right. Revelation, still in italics. Period. Spell out the entire, or write out the entire commentary series. Grand Rapids, and in this case it's probably brought to Michigan, colon, Baker Academic 2002. Why don't we have the page number? That's right. So the note is you include the page number, the bibliography, you're just writing the source for a book. Now, if you look this up electronically, you say, okay, I use an electronic book. If it is something like with our website, a lot of our electronic books through the library website are page to page. Where if you look up page 515 in a physical copy of this book, and you look at it, I don't know if we have this online, but let's say we did, and you look up a online copy of this book, 515, in both cases would be exactly the same. If that's the case, you don't need anything else for an electronic book. If, however, you got this, let's say, on like a Kindle, the only thing you would have to include is at the end you would want to say Kindle edition. because the page numbers aren't going to necessarily line up. Some Kindle pages aren't page to page. It's whatever can fit on the screen. And so if you look at it on one screen like this, somebody else is looking at it on their phone, the page numbers are going to be different. But if you say Kindle edition, Note edition, or something like that, that would clue in somebody who's reading this. Okay, this might not be exactly the same.
You put that on both? Kindle edition on both?
You would put Kindle edition on both.
And what about, I know you can click on the database and you can pull up a PDF. Is there a URL that comes with the PDF?
If you pulled it up through our database, when you first pull up the page, before you click on it to get the PDF, there's a little link that says permalink. And you can click on that, and that's the URL you want to use.
Gotcha.
All right, let's see. I think I had one more. All right. Last exercise. Take this information here, some of which is bibliographic citation, some of which is a note citation. What I want you to do with this is take all this information and develop a bibliography for me. All right. So what are some things you need to keep in mind in developing a bibliography? How's it going to be organized?
Alphabetical.
It's going to be alphabetical by last name. All right. So alphabetical by last name. Any abbreviations have to be spelled out. All right. This case, we'll just pretend like we got all of these physically instead of any sort of electronic. All right. So take a couple minutes. Again, you don't necessarily have to write everything out, but enough that you would be able to figure out. All right, because I'm going to ask what source is first, what is second. All right, so So I'm putting this in bibliographic form. Which source would you list first?
Hodges.
All right, Hodges. Now, in listing this first, what would you have to do differently? What would appear differently than the information that's currently on the screen? What was that? All right, so the name would be different, right? You're going to start with the last name, right, comma first name. What else is going to be different?
You wouldn't use the abbreviation.
You wouldn't use the abbreviation, so you spell the journal out, the journal title out. Again, journal titles are going to be in italics. What else would be different?
No, the punctuation.
All right, so the punctuation is going to be different. A lot of times, the general rule, it's not going to be all the time, but a lot of times, what is a comma in a note tends to turn into a period in the bibliography. All right. Now, there's some exceptions to that. Right? For example, between a publisher and a date, that's going to be a comma. But in a lot of other cases, commas turn into periods. All right. So Hodges would be first. What would be next? What's your next source? Is that Keith, right? Chris Keith. What would you change about this one? For the bibliography. It's a trick question, nothing. That's already a bibliographic citation. Right, so you wouldn't change anything. That reminded me, though, you would want to change the indentation. That's the other thing with the first one, right? All right, so after Keith, which one's next?
Okay.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Why is it O'Day and not Osborne? They both begin with O. Okay, but you have that little apostrophe. Does that matter? No, it doesn't. It doesn't, right? So if you have a situation like that where there is an apostrophe, then you just ignore the apostrophe and alphabetize according to whatever the next letter is. All right? And so O'Day, O-D comes before O-S. So O'Day would be the same, or would be the next. And like the Hodges, right? The name would be last name, first name, periods where we would have commas and the spelling out of the title, and then the indentation differently. Osborne, and we already talked about this one as a bibliographic citation. And then the last one would be Ward, same kind of thing, last name first, spelling out journal title, etc. So when you finally got that all together, it should look something like this. Any questions?